Greetings, brothers and sisters. Hello and welcome back to Eva's House of Spirit. I'm Eva, and it is finally that time. Sorry it's been a long time coming. Well, not really a long time, but a little bit of time. But finally, I'd like to answer Sergio Gutierrez's 7 questions that he had for me. He did the Eva's House of Spirit 1-year anniversary tag thing that I suggested. He was the one person who decided to give it a shot. So he answered my 7 questions about Eva's House of Spirit, and then he gave me the following 7 questions that I will be answering tonight. I think there's some pretty good questions. So let's jump right in, and I will be answering his 7 questions tonight. So, Sergio, here we go. Okay, question number 1. What got you into witchcraft? This is kind of a tricky question. I don't think in the beginning that I ever really had like one driving reason to get into witchcraft, but I think I was sort of always drawn toward witchcraft. I did grow up with stories that my mother would tell me about witchcraft, though her stories generally centered on, negative witchcraft, the kind that, oh man, like, it was just bad stuff. I mean, she would talk about bruxas, but it wasn't like bruxas, which bruxa is the Portuguese term for witch. Bruxas weren't, how can I explain it? My mother, she grew up Catholic, and in Old World Portugal, if you were like, I'm a bruxa, oh man, you would find yourself in some really, really, like, hot water. People would not respond well to you. Bruxas were not, loved by any means because in her stories, they weren't the kind of witch that did like positive, helpful sort of things. They really just were harming people in her stories. But um, I remember growing up with those. It's kind of like a cultural thing, by the way. There are people in certain places where the term witch, it's not culturally accepted as a good thing. It's automatically synonymous with like bad, So they would have like other terms for people that would do sort of like beneficial witchcraft and workings and so on and so forth, or spiritual sort of workings for people. Just an aside. But anyway, so yes, I grew up with these stories, so they were just always there. And yet I didn't make the connection, despite my mother telling these stories, that, witches were sort of real, which is kind of odd because my mother's stories never changed. And my mother always, she told the truth. It wasn't like she was making this stuff up. She was speaking about real people. But I don't know, it took me a long time, but, years later, I was watching a talk show and there were some Wiccans on there that were demonstrating a love spell. And that's when I had my like, oh my God, they're real kind of moment. But I don't even think that was sort of what led me into witchcraft, what got me into it. I think it was sort of just, maybe I was open to witchcraft in some respect, being raised, with the stories and just even watching, fictional representations of witches, they just sort of, I guess the representations, they stirred something in me, I guess, and I was just very open to, the supernatural, things that were, I always sort of had interest in things such as, astrology, although it was like, the horoscope in the newspaper or something like that, or like, um, though I had a very, I don't know if shallow introduction to things like astrology and so on and so forth in the very beginning, if that's the right term to say shallow. Um, Not in depth is what I mean. So I guess, yeah, shallow is the term I'm looking for. But anyway, I was open to these things, and I guess if you're receptive and open, eventually when you stumble upon what it is that really resonates with you, you're going to sort of fall into that. So, what got me into witchcraft? I guess my ultimate answer is um, maybe I was just sort of raised by a family that, it wasn't considered um, like the supernatural and psychic things and all that kind of stuff, superstition and all that sort of thing. It wasn't looked at as like bullshit. It wasn't. I wasn't raised in a household where you know uh, where my how can I put it? I was raised in a household that sort of, I guess, fostered my openness. Though it wasn't though my openness to these things wasn't really probably intentionally, fostered or cultivated. I was raised in a family and in a household where, you know, the possibility, the realm of possibility of things like witchcraft, psychic ability and all that, it wasn't stifled. So maybe that's part of what got me into witchcraft, ultimately. It's a hard question to answer. I hope I haven't rambled too much. I hope I've kind of answered the question in as clear a way as I could. Um, I think also one other thought, besides being raised in a household where, it wasn't stifling of my sort of leanings in that direction, which weren't conscious in the very beginning, by the way. I think the other thing is that when I ultimately made the choice to really start buying books and reading and getting into it, like really, really, I think the fact that it's an empowering lifestyle, an empowering practice, an empowering spirituality, an empowering sort of way. Um, that's probably a great deal of what really led me to witchcraft. I like feeling empowered in respect to my life. I like feeling that if something happens, I have some control. I can do something about it. So that's probably, that paired with my openness to it, those are probably the things really that led me, into witchcraft. Oh, question 2. What spells or rituals do you mostly cast or perform? Um, well, I do spells more than rituals, really. Um, I'm trying to think what I guess, um, hmm, I have to think about this one. Um, I do all sorts of spells, but if I could probably say what I tend to do more, I probably do a lot of protection, a lot of prosperity. I've done quite a few like love and romance works, like to kind of fan the flames here at home. um, but I mean, I do all sorts of workings. These are just probably the ones I tend to do a lot. I also, for other people, I tend to do a lot of like um, sort of remediation works. Like I sort of do a lot of backup for other people when they come to me and they're like, "Oh, I have this issue and blah blah blah," and or let's say they purchased a reading or whatever and something comes up, sometimes we'll work something out where I'll do something to help them out. But even backup works can be of all sorts. So, but I guess yeah, those are the ones that I probably do the most for myself in particular. Probably protection, like because I tend to do a lot of day to day, like let me get to work without crashing my car, please. Let me have a sort of positive, productive, safe, well kind of day. I tend to do a lot of workings like that. And then prosperity, because hey, you got to pay your bills, got to make your paper, boo boo. And then a lot of like romance, love kind of stuff. That's probably the stuff that I tend to do more, but that's not the be all and end all of what I do. Question 3. I just realized something. You did 1, 2, 2, 3. So actually, there are 8 questions. I'll answer them all. That's okay. 3. Do you have any natural or supernatural abilities? I think every human being has inherent spiritual or supernatural. I say in quotes like it's because you know what, they are actually natural. I think we do have these inherent abilities. I believe everyone is psychic, but for some people it's easier to tap into, and you know it's kind of like, okay, everyone has the ability to be, for example, artistic, but for some people, some are more talented in it naturally, where it just kind of flows, and then other people have to kind of cultivate it a little bit. I think it's the same thing with psychic abilities. For some people, they're just really strong, in their abilities right out of the gate from the time that they're young. And then some people, you kind of have to like practice and work at it, and then you kind of hone your abilities a little bit. I believe everybody, has that. For myself, I am an intuitive, which is different from being an empath. An intuitive is similar in that, I will pick up on things, energies, vibes, feelings, whatever, but unlike an empath, I will not sense them as though they were my own feelings. I have a very easy time separating, like telling where whatever it is coming from. For example, if I walk into a room where an argument has happened, I won't feel that frustrated, angry sort of feeling as if I'm feeling it like an empath would. I would walk into a room and be like, there's some frustrated, negative sort of fight energy here, if there was a fight there or something like that. Or if I walked into a room where someone had spent a lot of time and they were very sort of depressed. Instead of being how an empath is, walking in and just feeling really, really depressed, I would walk in and I would be like, well, there's a lot of depressed energy here. I tend to have just knowings about things, or gut feelings. Like I will just sort of get impressions in regard to things. But again, it's not like empathy. It's just I will sort of know stuff sometimes. I find it comes easier when I'm more open to, that part of myself. If I'm, let's say, really frustrated, distracted, whatever, not feeling well emotionally, if I'm, just really like physically not feeling great, it's not going to be conducive to me being picking up on my impressions as clearly. They will still be there. I can still pick up on things, but I think it comes a lot easier when I'm in a pretty like healthy state of being and I feel kind of good. Um, what else? So yeah, I'm an intuitive. I'm a strong scryer. I will look at objects or things, and they will give me impressions, like how you would look at clouds and see like shapes and stuff, and then those, if I was to do that, basically looking at clouds or looking at something, wood grain, whatever, yeah, I would see shapes and stuff in that object or whatever it is. But then I would get feelings about the shapes that I'm seeing. I would liken it to symbolism and so on and so forth, and I would sort of, the storyline would kind of formulate, and I would gain my knowing that way. I do that a lot with tarot cards, for example. I do a lot of scrying into the imagery, and even though it's the same image on, a particular card can have the same image, and that particular card can come up for different people, it's not going to tell me the same story for different people, in different readings or whatever, necessarily. Often it doesn't. What else? What else? Other than really being intuitive, getting gut feelings, being, a strong scryer, I've only really had like experiences with dreaming true very infrequently. It's not something that happens to me a lot. Also, I do see spirits, though I haven't seen one in a long time. It's not constant. I'm not like those people that walk around in every waking moment of the day. They're seeing dead people. No. Um, I will see them sometimes, not all the time. It's been a while lately. Um, Usually, I think, though, they really only come to me or appear to me, or I only notice them or see them when it's something serious, like there's a message to be conveyed or there's something going on, you know. My house is also very clean. I don't have, in the sense of like atmosphere, especially. I'm no June Cleaver, okay, but I do keep the atmosphere very cleansed and very light. So there are no spirits like haunting my house. I'm not going to say there are no spirits here at all, but there are no negative spirits here. Nothing negative here. But regardless, I'm kind of going off topic. I believe, yes, I do have abilities, and I believe everyone has abilities. I believe that, yeah, there's room for me to improve, just like there's room for everyone to improve. No one has ever really attained the best of their abilities, at any point in their life. It's a lifelong process. We're constantly growing and evolving and getting better and working on ourselves. That's why, especially when I do readings for people, I ask them for feedback and I say, please let me know, like, was I accurate? How did I do? What happened? What did you think? Because when I get that feedback, it helps me to gauge, like, am I, doing well? Am I, working my psychic abilities, the way that I should be to help people? Like, am I on track, or is there something I'm not doing right? So yes, I'm constantly trying to further my abilities through practice and study and work. But and I think everyone should always, because we are all works in progress, we human beings. Um, but yeah, so I do believe that everyone has abilities. For some, certain abilities will come more easily, and then for others, you kind of got to work to develop particular areas of ability. Um, okay, question one, two. This would be question 4, but because you did number 2 twice, you've listed it as number 3. Have you ever spelled someone without them knowing? Yes. I'm gonna say several times, not necessarily in a bad sense. It depends situationally. I'm not Wiccan. I don't believe in like the law of three. I do believe in consequences though. Um, I have done work on people in certain cases. Not so much lately, really, but I have done work on others without them knowing. And then I guess the second part of your question is, was it for the best for them? Um, in some cases, yes, it was to help them. In some cases, no. However, I will say that at this point in my life, I am reluctant to do things to try to help people if they have not expressly asked for my help. Just like I do not read for people unless they specifically ask for a reading. And the reason why is because who am I to interfere in someone's life? And in the case of readings, who am I to look into their private situations? Unless it was like something really dire, oh my God, other lives hinge on this, like something is seriously like, holy crap, I would really shy away from working on or reading others. And I try not to work on others as much as I can, though, life is not black and white and cut and dry. I try to consider consequences before I go that route of working on others, but um, not going to say I've never done it. Not going to say I've never done it, but I do think work on other people is something that really you really got to be careful doing stuff like that. There's just a lot of like you got to really weigh like cause and effect. You really got to weigh pros and cons. You really got to consider what you know. There's just so much It's like you can really get into some sticky stuff there. Because you got to consider the web of weird too. Like threads are intertwined. You know, you screw with one thread, something happens to somebody else. Um, and there's just so much more to it. It's like a whole philosophical thing, and there's just like it's complicated, complex. But I don't take things like that lightly. I will say that. Um, Now, the next question you have here is, what is your favorite magical tool? Um, I'm really drawn, honestly, to incense. I also love my tarot cards. Uh, those are probably two things that spring to mind most readily. I enjoy candle work quite a bit. Um, but incense, I'd have to say, if I really could say like a tool, I say incense is a tool because really it does play a role in spell work. You know, it has a lot of things that it can accomplish or do or contribute. You know, carrying prayers, sanctifying space. You can charge a stick of incense and use it in place of a candle in a pinch. You know, that there's a lot of things you can do with incense. It can help to click you into that mindset of work, you know, spiritual work and all that kind of stuff, magical work. I love incense. It's something that I'm just very much into. And my favorite kind of incense is Tibetan incense. Because it doesn't have that little wooden stick, but it is still kind of like a stick incense, but it's like this real rich, nice smell. Anyhow, so those are probably, if I had to name one, if I had to live with only one and I couldn't have any other, I'd probably say a deck of tarot cards, because you could do so much with those too. But it's hard to pick a real favorite, so I'm going to say incense, tarot cards, and candles. Those are probably my top three. So, has anyone had a bad reaction to you as a witch? Oh, hell yes. Hell yes. I've had several experiences where I've faced judgment, nastiness, all kind of like bias and crazy stuff. I've absolutely, I mean, not even just like once, many times, many times. Um, I've had bad reactions from people who didn't like that I was a witch, period. And then I have had bad reactions from other witches who didn't think I was doing things right, you know, or that you know, some of them felt like, oh, well, you don't know your stuff, you know, and it's like, what? Different strokes for different folks, honey. Okay? So, yes, I've had quite a few bad reactions, but I guess you kind of got to just let those roll off your back because you got to agree to disagree. You know, people, they're going to have their different opinions, and you know what? They can go on and step on their soapbox, step up on there and be like, ah, that's fine. You just keep on doing you, you know? Because that's what I do, and it's just screw that shit. I don't need that shit in my life. You know, as long as no one's physically hurting you, then just never mind that bullshit. You know, if they're physically hurting you, then that's fucked up, and that's when you press charges, or that's when you do what you gotta do. You know, you need to, you know, either if you don't get the law involved, you know, hell, you can do some pretty nasty stuff spiritually too. But I would say get the law involved. Take the mundane route first. That's my advice. Um, if someone were to get physical with you, anyway. And fight back. By the way, if someone's gonna get physical with you, I'm not a believer in starting fights, but oh yes, I am a believer in finishing them. Um, anyway, I'm so like all over the place. Um, the next question you have here. Have you ever intimidated, scared, or threatened anyone by saying you are a witch? I laugh because, yes, I have. Oh my God. Years ago, I have one funny story. Years ago, this happened a couple times. Like, I've done this a few times, but like, it's not like a regular thing, but it's happened. One funny story that most readily comes to mind. Years ago, I worked in a pizzeria, and there was a cook in the kitchen, and he was an illegal Mexican immigrant. You know, for the most part, we got along. He was a great guy, you know. Um, but he was a little bit sexist, and he would do things that were kind of like harassment sometimes, and that wasn't cool. When he wasn't doing that bullshit, which he only did it once or twice until I did this, and then he stopped. But when he wasn't doing that shit, he was actually pretty cool. But that, I just drew the line there. I'm like, no, buddy, this isn't gonna fly. So there was a time one day I'm like washing dishes, and I just had this really, I don't know what it was. I just kind of had this feeling like, turn around, girl. So I turn around, and he's standing with one of the delivery drivers, and he's got a hot dog by his crotch, and he's waggling it behind my back, like kind of, you know, I'm laughing because it was so fucking ridiculous. But he's kind of like making a harassing gesture, behind my back. So I went, oh, oh. And I walk over there and I told him, I said, like, I'm a witch. You don't want to fuck with me. He was like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I said, okay, that's better. And he didn't do that shit after that. But, yeah, I put the fear of God in him. Because, you know what, don't be waggling hot dogs like it's your penis at me when I'm turned around and stuff. And what's funny, too, is when I turned around and caught him, the delivery driver was like, ha, you're caught, It was funny. I laugh about it now. I mean, really, it's not like he did anything physical to me. It was just, dude, a little respect. You know what I mean? So I scared the hell out of him because he obviously believed. He was a believer. So he feared that, pissing me off might not be such a good thing. But I was very young anyway too. But yeah, so that's one funny story with that. I have scared the shit out of some people, so that's happened. And the final question you have for me, Sergio, which is technically question 8 because you listed number 2 twice. Your final question for me is, what is your favorite type of crystal to work with and why? It's hard to choose a favorite. There are many awesome crystals. The one that pops into my mind most readily, I love citrine, because citrine, I find, is a stone that does not need cleansing. It's self-cleansing. It's a very positive stone, citrine. Citrine is also good for prosperity. It's good for blessings. It's good for lightening an atmosphere. It's good for helping to keep your emotions on a lighter keel too, like kind of helping you to not be like angry or like bleh, or like blah. It kind of helps to keep you in a better headspace and emotional place, I find. So I like working a lot with citrine. I like it to clear spaces in my house. I have this huge cluster that I have upstairs, and that is just, I love keeping that, in my bedroom to really sort of keep that atmosphere good, especially because I like sleep there, like. But citrine in general, I have a few pieces of citrine. I love citrine. Citrine is a very, very awesome stone. There are other stones I love too. I love hematite. Quartz is always a freaking awesome classic. I mean, there are so many stones that are just great to work with. Turquoise, I find, is great for calming, soothing, emotionally. It's very good to, like, chill you out emotionally and mentally if you're freaking out, like if you're having a panic attack or if you're nervous about something. Or it's a good healing stone, especially I find, and I find it helps as well to sort of bring your subtle bodies like into better alignment. It's a very restful, calming, healing, soothing stone, turquoise. That's another one I like. But if I had to choose like one of my favorites, I'd have to say citrine, because I do love that it's self-cleansing. In my experience anyway. I'm not going to say, oh, it's self-cleansing for everybody, because maybe for some people it's not self-cleansing. But from what I understand, from what I've come to experience with it, it's self-cleansing. It's great if you have a big cluster to use to cleanse smaller stones. You could just place them on top of it and it will cleanse and re-energize smaller stones too. But anyway, so yes, Sergio, I have answered the questions you have for me. None of them were too personal, but but they were fun to answer. You know, they were really fun to answer. I wish that more people had done the Eva's House of Spirit 1 year anniversary tag. You know, where I gave 7 questions that, you know, you'd answer them and then you'd give 7 to me. Or in this case, 8, but I'm letting that slide because, dude, Sergio, you're cool. But anyway, so be it. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. I hope you've found my answers interesting. I hope I've answered them well, you know, that I haven't left any gaps of curiosity. And with that said, I wish you blessed be and ashe. Have a great night, and until our next exchange, until next time, bye-bye for now.